Morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's Zoom session. And
Yeah.
we have Angela Metcalf, who's from Auckland University, and she's just going to basically talk to us a little bit about her research. And I believe it was on social frailty. Is that right, Angela?
That's correct. Yes, that's
All
right.
right, wonderful. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably just get you to start talking on your research, and then
Okay.
we can keep it as casual as you like, Angela. We're really quite chill anyway in these Zoom
Oh,
sessions.
lovely. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
So go ahead and start the session. Make it your own. Talk to us a little bit about your research, and then if anybody has questions, they can ask you a little later on. Is that okay?
No, that's great. Wonderful.
Awesome. Alrighty. So handing it
Lovely.
over
So,
to
hello, everyone,
Angela.
as I've nicely been introduced, I'm from the University of Auckland, and I'm part of a research team there. And we're starting a new study on what we call social frailty. So it's a new term that we've developed at the university. This is our third study I've been involved in. The first one was the super study, which was standing upright and eating well research. That was for 3 years and very successful. And then we're just finishing off an awesome study, which was to do with aging well, eating, sleeping, socializing, and more. And this one here has been launched. We'd like to make it international next year. But before that, we just need to do a pre-study, which we're doing at the moment. So we're going to be doing some surveys from September to November. And basically, it's on social frailty and what people think social frailty is and how we can come up with some sort of system that can help healthcare like GPs and that to identify people that may be socially frail in our community. So in a nutshell, basically, we've had some focus groups to talk to older people to see what they think social frailty is. And it ranges from, we had some sort of people talking about not being able to get out and about, so not being able to leave the home, whether it's you don't drive anymore, it's access, it's money, it's the ability or the being anxious about leaving your home or going out and doing things. So it comes down to the sort of the social side. There was lots of sort of aspects that came out in the focus groups that were really interesting. So now what we want to do after doing those is we're going to set up some questions that we can come out and ask people, along with another survey, which is on your physical side, your mental side, also to get a really good round picture. And the more people we can get from sort of different ages and different abilities, we can then take all that research and see if we can then launch a big study next year. So it's very exciting. We're the first in New Zealand to branch into this area of social frailty. I think, to be fair, it probably came a little bit off the back of COVID, because I think with COVID, it forced people into their homes and to become quite isolated. And so for that, I think when we started to look at things, we started to look at, what the impact was if you are at home and unable to go out and do your normal daily activities and what sort of aspect that had on your ability to do things. So that's where this came out. What else can we tell you about it? Yeah, basically we want to see how it affects your physical and mental well-being, how much of that has to do with social frailty, your intrinsic capacity, what else? Yeah, it's really interesting. So it'd be great to hear from you guys what you think of social frailty or what you would think social frailty is, just for some feedback. Anyone want to comment?
A lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of community services and everything are now saying that everything's available on the web, on email and the like. But most people over 70 have not got access to any of this. So they're precluded from being able to get at this. The one that really gets us is that a lot of companies, I had to go at Water Care the other day, are charging $1.20 for sending your bill out by post. But
Wow.
if you do it by email, you don't have to pay. So there's age discrimination there. And I had to go at them, but they said we can do nothing about it. So I'm about to write, I wrote to the government somewhere and they got a little note, thanks for your complaint, we'll look into it. And that's all I've got to at the moment. There's a lot of this going on, saying that services are available online, on the web, and this precludes the over 65s and the over 70s.
Yes, it's very interesting you say that, because the two studies I was talking about, the recent one, which I was involved a little bit in, but I also do another job as well. So I balance my university life with my other job. Funny enough, the last study was the Awesome study, and it was based on an app, and it was based on people having to use or have some form of technology. Now, the study didn't succeed. So what that showed us was that it's not something that's going to work for people exactly as you say when it comes to sending letters. People didn't thrive or basically enjoy, or was of no benefit to them whatsoever. Now, the previous study before that, the one I was talking about, the Standing Upright and Eating Well study, we put people into 3 groups. One was a social group, one was a eating group, so that was sort of showing people how to sort of eat for as they get older and if they're living on their own, and one was an exercise group. Believe it or not, today those exercise groups and some of the food groups are still going today and are very successful. Hence that study was very successful, but none of it was based on anything being online. So it's been a really good comparison to see how successful that one was. Then they took on this Awesome study, hoping that to see what would happen if you could give people an app and see if they could follow it, and yet it didn't work. So that's sort of something we're trying to look at with this study, is that if we can get some good results to show that people are socially frail and how can we help that, do we then look at doing a similar type thing? Like, a lot of people say they don't have access to exercise class or access to social activities or access to things in the community they can attend. So I think that'd be a really important thing for us to look at, to see if we could create or have more access to these things, would it make a big difference to people's social frailty? So that's a really good comment. Thank you for that. That's excellent. Yeah. Anybody else?
The other day we went somewhere and somebody said, I said, how do I do this? Oh, you just download the app. Well, first of all, what's an app? And secondly, how do you download it? And where do I take it to?
Yes, yeah. So hence why when we did this study, we have kept it, so you've got the option of an email, a phone number, an 0800 phone number, and also a little photograph or something. So we tried to make it so that everybody had that accessibility, so they could just ring an 0800 number and leave their details, or they can email us, or there's also something else they can download. We were sort of trying to cover all bases. So yeah.
Well, I've taken part in two trials now.
Lovely.
And both of them, you had to fill out an e-diary.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, well, I was okay with that. But yes, I believe they did have a lot of problems with some of the people, because all the people who took part in both the studies were over 65,
right,
so and older. So
yes.
Yeah, I think some of the problem what Brian and you were talking about is, and they were saying that yes, some of them had real problems with filling out their e-diaries. So yeah, maybe you do need to think about doing it a different way as well. If you want to use technology, maybe have the option for some older people.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, that's very much what came evident. And the often we get approached by people to look at things, and it was an app that was approached by the university by somebody overseas to say, hey, let's see if we can launch this in New Zealand, and let's see if you can do a study on it. And as we think it's successful from our point of view to prove that it wasn't a success, but the people that created the app weren't very happy because they wanted it to be something that would they could launch. I mean, ACC does an app and things like that, but you're absolutely correct. And I think that's what we're finding so far, is that people don't necessarily want it. They don't have that technology or want to do it that way. And that's what we sort of think with social frailty. I don't think you can beat that sort of one-on-one getting out there, going somewhere and actually talking to people in person and having that ability to leave your house, I guess. Yeah.
And I think it's also that ability as well, Amanda, to actually kind of like create that relationship between the researcher and just, create like some sort of a connection where you're able to kind of, give and take and kind of like get the conversation rolling. There's nothing
Yes,
that's more, I guess how would I say, there's nothing more special than being able to connect with that person on a, face-to-face kind of like scenario rather than having
absolutely.
it on an app.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So with the super study, the first study that we did was I had 100 people living in Howick over the age of 75, and I visited them about 5 or 6 times over 3 years. So it was quite nice because we would come and our visits for about 3 hours each time, and you got to know the people really well, but it was face-to-face research, which was lovely because you got to sort of go and have that face-to-face time with people and develop quite good relationships and get to know them really well, but also see the changes in them from the start of the study to the end of the study, which was really nice. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing. I think the other lot of feedback that we got was that there's actually quite a lot out there, but how do people know about it, or how do people access it? So I visited a group that makes teddy bears down at the St. John Hall, and there's a sewing group and there's all sorts of things, but they're not well advertised, or unless you know how to find them, how do you access these groups out there? So if you wanted to be more social and join groups, I think a lot of the feedback was, how do you find out about those groups? How can we, or how can something be developed that you can find out more about things? Yeah.
It's usually word of mouth, these things.
That's right.
The writing group at the library is word of mouth. The sewing group at the other library is word of mouth, and things like this. They're just who you know and all the rest of it. If you don't go out and mix with people, you don't get to know.
That's right. Yeah.
We are the very few. Look at us around here. There's what is it? 4 of us joined in this meeting that are over 70.
Yes.
Most of us are over 80. I won't say that. Sorry, ladies.
No.
No, you're right. I'm over 70.
And we are different to everybody else because we can use a laptop, we can use a computer, we can use these. Most of the people of our age just haven't got the computers and things to do it, so they're out of a lot of things. And of course the other thing is you will get pestered by adverts.
Or scammers.
Yes. And that's a good point actually when you talk about that, because with our study we do get a lot of information about people. So we ask some very personal questions, we ask a lot of questions that we access your NHI number and all sorts of bits and bobs. And so I think in these days that people are quite nervous about becoming involved, because I think, oh my Lord, you're asking me all these details and all this personal information. But we're very, very strict on what we do with that information, and we're very, very highly we have the ethics committee that we have to, like, considering the last 2 studies, we had 2 or 3 pages on our ethics and what we did with information. Now we've got about 10 pages that we have to give to people to read through to get consent. So it's getting stricter and stricter these days. And even myself, just to get into my emails in the morning, I have to go through like a 2 or 3 step authentication process of getting things down my phone just to get into my email. So they're pretty strict on it. But yeah. So do you guys meet every month, or how does the group work with this forum?
Yeah. So with the Zoom sessions, Angela, we tend to have one every month, in the middle of the month, but we also do have a lot of get-togethers in terms of like having a monthly coffee catch-up out at Tutui. We've also got our weekly walking group and catch-up. We do a lot of day trips, different types of programs that we've got running. It's just a matter at this point for us, I guess, trying to find an appropriate space to work from.
Yes.
And at the same time not run into trouble with the people that we work with. So yeah, we do have a lot of meetings. I am also coming up with a couple of community sessions that will be run by the CAB here in Pakuranga.
Nice.
So yeah, we try to have like a variety of different activities or courses or programs or outings kind of running throughout the year.
Oh, nice. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. So you not only get online, but you also do things in person as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
We have had in a lot of our Zoom sessions as well, sessions around like National Health and Disability Advocate. We had Narita come on board to talk to us about that. And, you know, we've had other Zoom sessions as well where we do bring in like speakers. One of them is you this morning.
Yes.
So yeah, all of this definitely requires quite a bit of planning ahead of time, and also just seeing if the speaker is available on that particular day.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow.
But
That's
you'd
great.
be welcome to attend our coffee catch up at Tatui. You'd
Oh, I'd
probably
love
get
to.
you'd
Yeah.
probably get a bit of a bigger crowd,
Yes.
and you can maybe even drop by some resources about your research and yeah,
Yeah.
over to some of our members.
That's great. Yeah.
Good
Yeah. I
morning,
think
Chris and Claire.
oh, they've joined us.
Have joined us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, Jenny and Barbara.
Yes, I think a couple of the ladies from my last one of the study groups I had has joined it and was telling me about it at the end of the study last time. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Chris and Claire. I'm Angela from the university. How are you?
Morning, Angela.
Hello. Good, thanks.
Good, good. Just telling them a little bit about a study that I'm doing at the moment on social frailty. So we've just been talking about sort of social frailty and how everyone thinks about it and what their thoughts are and things like that. So basically we're trying to recruit some people to be involved in a survey that we're doing running from September to November, where we come and visit you in your home and we do a 3-hour survey on social frailty. So there's a physical component to it and lots of questions about what you do and how you do it and who you are and all sorts of things. And then from that, if we can get enough people, we'd like to then sort of next year launch into an international study on social frailty. So this is sort of like a pre-study, if you can call it, to prove our theory and try to get an idea on it, and then get more funding next year. So we've just been talking about what we think social frailty is. So I'd be keen to know what you think social frailty is and what you think it is.
It's going to be my question as to what is social frailty. Ninra, can we change the name on Angela's screen, please, so we know she's Angela, not Amity?
Oh, that's my that's my
that's the
username
thing.
Yeah. Are you able to change it from your end, Angela?
Oh, I think we're just talking about technology before. I don't know if I can. Let me have a look and see.
Because I think that's
top
how
right of your screen should be 3 dots.
Oh, yep, there, yep. Rename. There we go.
That's the one.
Goodness, you're teaching me about technology.
and me. There we
Hey.
go.
Philosophy of senior net is learn something new every day.
Oh, well, there we go. You're probably a lot more savvy than I am, crikey. I do try, but yes.
Oh, we all try. You just ask any of the team here.
Yes, well, we did some focus groups because this was a new term that came up with us explaining to the others that sort of, I guess, post-COVID, and we'd come off these 2 other studies we were doing. And when they sort of came up with the name social frailty, I thought, oh, that's not a very nice term. Like, you know, sort of frailty, everyone sort of thinks is, well, I think of frailty, or, you know, sometimes I've done talks with people and they say, oh, why do you call it that? That's terrible. You know, you're presuming that everyone older is frail. And that's not what we think at all. But it was a name that was sort of, it comes from one of the professors that's the head of the research, and that was a name that was given, and that's what we were given to work with. So whether we change it down the track, maybe. But yes, these focus groups were talking about different aspects and what they thought social frailty was. So it was, some of it was feeling isolated at home, not being able to access and get out and join clubs. How do you join them? The money behind, you know, that some things were quite expensive these days to join. So like exercise classes, they wanted $5 or $10 a class. You know, how do you get places if you lose your license? Interestingly, there was actually quite a few couples that had lost their husbands or wives, and so that they might have cared for them for a while, and then they became socially isolated because they were used to being together, and they didn't have the confidence as one person to go out and actually make friends and do things, which was quite amazing, and to listen to some of them and see how, you know, emotional it was for them, and how that for them felt they were sort of socially frail, you know, independent in everything they did around the house, but found it hard to branch out and go out and actually meet people and do things. So yeah, we got quite a lot of feedback on different things. We've also involved in South Auckland as well. I'm not running that side of things, but I have another research assistant that's helping, and she's looking at the South Auckland side of things. So that's going to give us a really good, we've only ever done the study sort of in Aotearoa. And so I think that'll give us a really culturally diverse aspect to how different people in different communities struggle with social frailty.
Absolutely.
I thought a frailty had something to do with being taken advantage of by family and so-called friends.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. It's looking at everyone has a different idea. Yes. Yeah. Well, that is quite a big thing at the moment, isn't it, that people are concerned about? And I think that even I think when they showed on 2020, that documentary, I don't know if you guys saw it, it was a couple of months ago, on how some people couldn't afford to live on pension, and that they weren't getting support, and that they talk about this poverty in New Zealand and aimed at sort of beneficiaries and people, you know, young families, but they're not actually looking at the older generation, and that there is a lot of people out there that are struggling, and that, you know, the pension isn't enough and all that sort of stuff and things like that. So yeah, and I guess in South Auckland as well, so far a lot of the people that we're getting recruiting for the study often live with their family. You know, it's quite different out there, and we have a lot of retirement villages in Howick and a lot of options for people, and we get quite a few people in the study from retirement villages, so that gives us a really different aspect. Out in South Auckland, that's not so prevalent. So sometimes we don't have a choice.
Another frailty, I think, is the working poor. They actually work, and their kids they've just had to leave them alone because they've got to work. And it's really, really, I used to work in the workplace with these folk, and it's glad to hear that somebody's taking it seriously now.
Yeah.
Poor is there among us.
Yes. Well, it's a bit like and I think there's sort of poverty throughout everywhere in New Zealand, and every you know, place. It's not just Auckland, it's not just, you know, rural towns, things like that, but it's also spread across all ages, races, communities, everything. I think sometimes people put people into certain categories or think it only affects certain people, whereas it's quite nationwide and quite an issue in New Zealand as things, you know, food's gone up, petrol's gone up, so many things have gone up.
That's right.
Yeah. So it has quite a big impact on people. So if you're restricted to a certain amount of money each week, and you want to go to an exercise class or want to join a club, but it's going to cost you $5 or $10 each time, that becomes an issue, doesn't it? For some people, they can't afford to do that. So that takes their choice away sometimes. So, yeah.
Takes the choice away, but I think that also, like, the whole element of money just plays such a huge role in, how do I say this, in any community initiative that somebody wants to run, in any community project, and any you know, anything that is designed to be of good to people, to be of service to people. Unfortunately, it just always finds its way in.
Yes.
Money always just finds its way, and it just becomes such a big element of that project, and it just gets in the way of you trying to serve people.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, it was like the super study that we did. A lot of the basis on that was, some of it was, we were funded by different people. One of them was ACC, because we were trying to, it was looking at, because it was a 3-year study, we looked at people, we look at your medical history, but also it was based a lot on falls as well, and whether people had a fall over that time, and what happened post the fall, and how we could prevent that as well, because it's huge in New Zealand. If somebody falls and breaks a hip, which is quite common, the impact from that is massive. It's not just, oh, you pop into hospital a couple of weeks, that, you know, it can be quite a drastic change for people. And so a lot of it, I guess, was trying to say, well, how can we show, you know, give people opportunity to live more independently in their homes for longer? Because even now that we're sort of 6 years down the track from starting that study, we were talking about statistics the other day, and it's like 1 in 4 people in 2050 will be of the older generation needing some sort of care or things like that. That's massive. We don't have enough room in rest home facilities as it is now. So what's going to happen then? So it's sort of trying to boost our research into looking into the older people side of things to see what can we do now that's going to make it better down the track. So it's not necessarily going to make a big difference now, but it's going to make a huge difference for people as the years go on. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think it's a lot of, it definitely is a lot of promotion and just putting in those preventative measures into place
exactly.
so that
Yes,
you can enable people to live longer and
yes,
healthier in their own homes in the comfort of their own space, rather than, like you were saying, going into like rest homes and things like that. Because we'd most definitely will probably be running out of space if that's what the rate is showing.
yes, yeah.
But
Well, I think of how I've lived in Howick all of my life. I was actually born in Howick, and I look at Howick Baptist, where you're based, and it started off as this very small rest home, and I look at it now and how big it is and all the different branches from it, and it's absolutely huge. And you look at these retirement villages, and they're absolute. Some of them are just huge. The one they're building on Botany Road, they're huge. They're really, really big places. Yeah, a lot of people in them. So yeah, it's really
Big
interesting.
places, and then again, once again, unfortunately, very costly.
Very costly.
Very
Yes.
very
costly
costly.
to
We
try
can't
and
afford it.
to get into. It's
You just can't afford to get in, and you can't afford to live there because it's $120, $130 a week.
Yes, that's
Well,
right.
that's a lot of
160,
money.
Brian.
Yes, different ones. I think it's gone up now, and they also take a lot of money from you at the beginning if you buy somewhere. I think you lose 30% as soon as you step in the door. So then if you need to go into other care, and I think the other thing is that they've become a little bit greedy, some of them, and the fact that they, like Pakuranga Park, promised that they would put in a dementia care unit in a hospital side of things, so that when people move into these places with the idea that if one of their husbands or wives or someone gets unwell, they're in that same facility. But what did Pakuranga Park do? They went and built a big new villas, and because it's more money to do that than to provide the dementia care side and things like that. And we're very struggling at the moment in Auckland to even have any dementia care facilities that are reasonable, and there's massive waiting lists, which is quite sad. Yeah, and very lacking in the ones that are out there. So yeah, it's all good to shift into these places, but it's actually some people are finding it hard because then something happens to their partner or their wife or their husband, and then they're unable to then go and visit them if they have to go somewhere else. Yeah,
that's right. So it kind of comes in and brings that question into play again. Does money play a big role in social frailty? And from what we're seeing, unfortunately, it is. It really is.
Yeah, but from what Brian said about the cost each week to live, don't discount that, because I know somebody who was looking at going into a retirement village, and they totaled up like the thing like rates and insurance and all the other bills they have when they're living in their own home, and maintenance and everything, as opposed to the weekly fee. And they found out there was only $40 in it.
Right.
A year. So, yeah, there are things, it seems a lot, but it actually isn't when you take into account all the bills you have when you're living in your own home.
And I think it's a balance, isn't it? As to whether, for some people, if you're living on your own, it's security. It gives you, there's people around you, as you say, you don't have to worry about doing your garden, or, what if something breaks in your house, or you get a leak in the roof, or, there's quite a lot of maintenance in your own house as well. So I guess there's pros and cons, isn't there, to both, depending on your circumstances. A lot of it's just the outlay of the cost of getting into them and making sure it's the right place for you going in there, I suppose, because all of them offer quite different packages, I guess you would say, and different amounts of money to get into them.
Right, different packages and different rates.
Yes.
Yeah.
Different rates, yeah.
And one thing that I found, I had a fall earlier this year, as most of you know, and I spent 12 weeks in Middlemore.
Yes.
That has changed our lifestyle quite a bit, because now we take a lot more precautions about moving around the house so that I don't fall over again, because I broke so many bones, it was ridiculous.
Yes.
The surgeon says, he says I could repair you, but my biggest problem was finding all the bits of your bones to put them back together. Well, that's ridiculous, Yeah. At least he talked to me. But the frailty of yourself at home, and this is just insane. We made sure we got a home that was level and flat, no stairs. We got 3 steps at the front door.
Right.
It's ridiculous to make sure that everything is right for you and to not have any more of these falls and things.
Yes, yeah. It's hard though. My parents have a very big house, because of course the same house as when we were children, with 5 bedrooms and a pool and stuff. They love the fact that it's on one level, but they don't like the size of it. But they can't find anywhere now that's one level that's not a retirement village. So it's a bit tricky. Everything they build these days is 2 or 3 stories high. So they're sort of stuck in that rut of sort of, they don't really want to go into somewhere like that, but they also can't find anything small enough that's on one level that if they do end up, it does make a big difference if you've got stairs. But you're right, Brian, when it comes to falls, it's a huge aspect of our study as well that we always encompass into. So even with this study, we talk about whether you've had a fall, your medical sign, because it does show us quite interesting data of what impact it has, and how much you do post or having falls. So yeah, really, really interesting. Yeah.
I grew up having 8 great aunts, and
lovely.
And it was great because they were very long lived. But I did notice, and I thought to myself, when I get old, I'm going to be very, very careful not to have a fall, because I noticed the difference whenever one of them had a fall. That was basically their life sentence is staying inside. And it sort of had a big impact on me, even as a kid, to think I'm not going to fall. And now that we've got 6 steps up to our front door, I always hold on to the railing and watch where I'm putting my feet, because I'm too scared in case I'm going to copy my great aunts and have a fall. So even though I'm pretty agile, I still make sure that I'm very, very careful going down those blooming steps.
Yes, but you're so correct. At one point, and I think they still say that, it sounds terrible, but if somebody falls and breaks a hip, that sometimes their longevity or their lifespan can only be 6 or 12 months, because sometimes it has such a massive impact on them, depending on how they can recover from that, because it's such a big injury that for some people it is a big demise for them, which is really sad. And when you look at the statistics, that's why it's so important that they go on about, like balance is a huge thing as we get older. And I know that in our exercise classes for the super study that we developed, a lot of it was, it's not so much on what, like obviously it's exercise, good to walk, but a lot of so much is the balance and things like that, and practicing things that gives you that stability. So in the last study, we do some sort of part study. So we have people that will approach us and sort of almost join on the study. And we had a lady that was gave us these actigraphy monitors, and a little tiny monitors that we put on people's lower back. And what it did is we recorded it for a week of what people did. So it showed us how much people walked around and got up and sat down. But it also, when someone was standing, it gave us data on how much they were actually out of kilter or out of sync. And so how much of a risk they were of having a fall, because when they were standing, they weren't standing firm enough. And so, how much of that is contributes to having a fall by sort of just falling one way or not having the strength to stand. So it's really interesting data.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Angela, because that was the case with my grandmother. She fractured her leg, and then one day before taking out her moon boot, she decided to kind of walk on her own, and she was feeling fine, and then she ended up breaking her hip.
Oh,
and that really was it for her. I mean, we were in Middlemore basically for the next couple of months, but yeah, it started out with the hip, they did the surgery, and then unfortunately she ended up getting, you know, back sores, and she ended up on antibiotics, and then slowly some of her vital organs you know, sadly started to shut down, and I mean, she ended up passing away really in hospital. But you're right, these falls can be quite traumatic,
mm,
They
and
are
quite life
having
threatening.
experienced it, yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
The other thing I was going to say to you, Angela, was your study's been in Howick and Tauranga, both sort of socially, how should we say, more well-off people.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you need to maybe look at people who are not so affluent to see how they get on, because there's some friends of ours, and they've had one or two little accidents and fallen over, and they find it terribly difficult in getting help to themselves because it costs money.
That's right.
Going to the doctor, going to the physiotherapist, people like this, you know, it's ridiculous. You know, I've got appointments with the doctors or physios, and you know, it's now gone up to they're charging $55 a visit to the doctor in this area of Howick.
Yes.
We get it for 52, we get a little bit of a discount. But my son, who lives over in Manurewa, he goes to the doctor and it's $17.
That's right.
You know, why on earth, in the areas where more older people live, should it be so expensive? You know,
Yeah.
We're even looking at to try and find out where the boundary line is to move to a doctor the other side of the boundary line.
That's right. Yeah, even Panmure and Pakuranga are even cheap. Pakuranga not so much now, but Panmure's a little bit cheaper. But you bring up a really good point. So what happened is when we did the super study, which was the first study, we did it in Auckland and Tauranga, but we also did it in Northland, in Invercargill. I think that was all. And we couldn't launch Whangarei at all. We had no one at all that would, because it was a lower socioeconomic area and a certain culture we were looking at, and they won't engage in research. And we tried the local maraes, we tried the lots of local places, and we couldn't get in. It wouldn't take off. Invercargill wasn't too bad, but it was a little bit tricky. I think just due to the size of it, and a lot of the stuff we were doing in a winter time, it was harder for people to get out and about because it was icy and snowy. But what came out of that, because it was one of the first studies that was launched, was that Howick and Tauranga, of course, Tauranga being the retirement capital of New Zealand, took off. And we got all the people we needed for the research, and it was a huge success. So then by looking at that, we said, okay, well, we know where we're going to get our research from. So then the awesome study was once again sort of just more based in Auckland and Tauranga. So for this study, we would like to do it Auckland-wide, but we have branched into South Auckland, so you're exactly right. So we have a lovely lady in South Auckland that's trying to, we've got a Pacifica group and we have a Maori group as well. And we also are just trying to launch into the Manurewa sort of South Auckland area. So, but once again, we're struggling a little bit to recruit just due to some cultural difficulties. So, so to sort of answer your question, we're very keen to get into different areas and different social and economical groups, but sometimes there's a little bit of a barrier that we've actually this time put out a $50 voucher. So when people are involved in our survey, we give them a $50 petrol or countdown or pack and save voucher. So that's helping, particularly in those sort of areas that they sort of see some benefit to being involved in the study. But yeah, it'll be really interesting. But it's very, very hard in research to get sort of people involved, and sometimes certain areas and certain cultures, particularly sometimes in the medical field, because we ask some questions that sort of delve into your medical history, and we just struggle to get people to engage. Yeah.
And I think
Angela?
also, oh, sorry, Chris, you can go.
Angela, Well, just one thing then, we've lost your video.
Oh, have you?
No, sorry, not Angela, Ninwa.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, no, I'm so sorry, Chris. We do have a training in the next room, so there are some people coming in and out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Angela, as an avenue into places such as Whangarei, have you tried through service clubs, Lions, Rotary, and other similar organisations?
Yeah, I guess we tried. I guess initially what they were trying to do, I was sort of focused more on the Howick, but the researchers trying to get into that area were trying to access sort of the more Maori Pacifica people, hoping that they would get
that is where service clubs can help, because in a lot of those places the service clubs do consist of a wide variety of ethnicities.
Yeah, so in Tauranga we're doing South Auckland and Tauranga as well, and we're launching and sort of trying to get into the different clubs and areas down there. So we find that so the lady that is running, one of the research assistants in South Auckland, is Maori herself, and she's been going to sort of some of the maraes and just lots and lots of different places, sort of putting the research out there. And actually this is our first research study that we have a Pacific area that we talk about. We look at the 4 pillars of health through Maori health that we ask everybody involved in the survey. And so that'll be really interesting as well. So it's the first time we've sort of embracing that side of it. So it's it'll be really interesting to see how we get on with that. But yeah, it's tricky all round to get people involved in research. As I say, there's a lot of information that we gather from people, and so sometimes people are a little bit nervous about, you know, someone coming to their home or someone coming and finding out all their information. But I did find that once people sort of get involved in it, they quite enjoy it, and often jump on board for the next surveys that we do.
That's right.
So.
And I think you guys basically touched base on it, Angela and Chris. I think, it just from like work experience and things like that, it definitely plays a massive role when you have, when you're going into a specific culture. I mean, even like, say for example, a wonderful research like yours, Angela. You know, when you have a specific culture, for example, where English is a barrier, right?
Yes.
Like, say for example, for my people, we speak one of the most ancient languages. We speak Near Aramaic. So
Wow,
if we were trying to touch that area, it would be so important to get somebody or like a researcher who's from the same culture where they can relate, where they can kind of cut out that barrier of language and really get the kind of information that you guys are looking for. But I think it's so wonderful that you guys have you know, got like a Māori researcher that's going out into these communities, or a Pacific Island researcher that's going out into these communities, because you really will get quite a bit of information out that way, because they can relate to them, you see. And like you said, sometimes, you know, people are quite hesitant to kind of give their information, or they'll feel a little bit nervous around, you know, discussing with you certain things. But if it's someone from a similar culture, they can kind of give and take and relate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The kind of information that you're after. But I think it's so wonderful that you've done that, and I think hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll take off for you guys.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's always tricky. I mean, I work in another healthcare side of things as well, and I think it's always tricky for people from different cultures, and knowing the language and the whole communication side of things. And it's really important that we access as many people as possible, and to be able to get as diverse a group as we say we tend to get people that you know, we can access the retirement villages and people jump on board there, but that's not necessarily what we're looking for. A lot of the time we want to get sort of a diverse group where people are at home or people are isolated, or just a really different diverse group. So we're hoping to get that this time, or even just a small group. We're not looking for a big group this time, but enough that we can really prove that this is something that's really worth pursuing in the future to have a benefit for people down the track. Yeah.
Another avenue for possible participants would be SeniorNet. SeniorNet is a countrywide organisation.
Oh, excellent.
As a result of that, a very, very wide variety of people involved.
Yeah.
This is how we became involved with Virtual Village through Ninwa's predecessor coming to talk to SeniorNet. SeniorNet is folding in some areas because of lack of numbers who are prepared to stand up and assist. But it
Yes.
could be a good avenue just to go along and present to the senior net as a guest speaker.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, we're trying to sort of get into the U3As and the bowling clubs but yeah, then just lots of different areas. So yeah, no, that's great. So do they meet up as a group or is it all online?
We have a general meeting once a month. This is talking from the Howard Pakuranga
Right.
side of things.
Yeah.
We meet on the first Friday of each month and have a guest speaker.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so that's yeah, have a look at guest speakers on the net anyway. Sorry, not guest speakers, senior net on the net,
Yes.
and you may well find other organisations in those areas you want to access.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I also belong to Max Senior Net, which is it's on the umbrella of Senior Net, but it's just for people without Apple products, and we have a meeting once a month as well. I go to both of them, and we have guest speakers as well. So there are some people from Senior Net that go to Max Senior Net, but there's also people who don't. So
Who don't. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Probus. Yeah.
Yes.
So have you tried Probus?
Yeah, we're just looking into those sort of areas now. We've been doing we've just finished our focus group, so we had to get sort of 2 focus groups together, which we got to get our basic idea of. So we needed to set up our questions for the survey on social frailty. So what we did is we got some university people together. We got lots of people from the community, and we asked them different questions. So we're doing that. So now we're right into our recruitment phase of because we start the surveys in September. So no, Probus is a great idea. We will definitely look into that as well. Yeah.
Pretty diverse in their coverage.
About Probus in Howick is closed long time ago, about 2 years ago. It closed down because of lack of support.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah, I do know several people who belong to different other Probus groups, and also there's been a breakaway from Probus, something to do with fees and money and that, and they called them friendship clubs.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I think I've heard of that. Yeah.
So they're basically Probus under another name.
Otherwise, oh, sorry, Angela. I was just going to say, otherwise, maybe you can also try branching into maybe speaking to some of the case managers out at WINS, especially the team that's responsible for, managing superannuations and things like that. You could maybe try and see if you can maybe, have your surveys there or shared with some of their clients.
Yeah, no, that would be good. And I think one interesting part of it's also difficult to get men involved as opposed to women. So in most of the studies, we always get lots of women, but we probably get about a quarter or a third of the participants being men. So it'd be quite good to sort of get into men's clubs too.
Doesn't that reflect the population?
What's that?
Doesn't that reflect the population?
I think sometimes the population, and I think that no disrespect to you men on the chat, but I think women are a little bit more forthcoming and happy to share their sort of information. Sometimes we always used to have a bit of a chuckle in the super study when I used to visit, and there was husbands and wives. We did like a food diary and different things, and it was always quite funny because we would go and sit in the dining room, for example, and the wife might be in the lounge or something, and they'd be the men would be answering a question, and you'd hear this little voice from beyond say, "No, you had 3 chocolate chippies. I saw you had that." That they'd have to give us a food diary of what they ate, and it'd be like, "No, you did have ice cream for dessert." Things like this, or or they, sometimes it was like always a bit of a joke in the group, between the wives, and they say, "He's not telling you the right answer." But yeah, I think it's just different, isn't it? Men to women. I look at my husband sometimes and what they sometimes comment or want to talk about, whereas I think naturally sometimes us women just love to chat, don't we? So
no comment.
You find it easier.
Nenra,
Yes.
Nenra, I was just thinking that looking at wider access to people, what about Presbyterian support where Bonnie and Lee went to? Would they be an avenue?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of Angela's research, Angela do you want to look at only like South or East Auckland, or could you branch out to like Green Lane areas?
Can branch out. Unfortunately, I've just lost one of my research assistants. It was supposed to be, she's been covering sort of St Heliers Green Lane area, but we certainly can branch out into that area. Yeah,
because that's a wonderful service, as Chris mentioned, for you guys to maybe branch into and see if you can have your survey available to them as well.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, no,
that's absolutely
great.
right, Chris. Where Lee and Bonnie have moved into, it could definitely be another avenue.
Because they'd be looking at a wide diversity of people there
That's
too.
right. That's right. That's right.
And that's, I think, is quite important. I think I've been talking to, is it Lorraine up at Howard Baptist, and she runs the day programs as well. So
yes.
Trying to sort of get that side of things where people are coming in for day programs, and so we're sort of trying to get that wide net of sort of the variety of people that, for some of them, she was saying they coming into the coming into the program, and that sometimes they're only social outing for the day or the week. As that they get picked up and brought in. So
it's such a beautiful program that Lorraine runs, and it's a very wonderful project in terms of, you know, when some of these people that come to the day club, you know, they're living with their family members, as you said, but unfortunately, because, you know, either son and daughter-in-law have to both work to kind of make ends meet. So, you know, what about other places in New Zealand, for example, when there isn't something like this available?
I know.
What happens then, right? I mean, where do you leave your loved one?
I know. Well, sometimes as we see, they're left at home to fend for themselves, which is really sad.
Well, it's very sad. And when their situation kind of worsens, or their symptoms worsen, and they're unable to kind of look after themselves properly, you know, what happens then is like, okay, one of the person that's looking after them, either the son, daughter-in-law, or whatever, have to kind of step down from their role. But when they do that, then it affects everybody else in the family. So I think having the day club here is just such a wonderful, wonderful initiative, because you just see so many of these people that drop off their loved ones. Sometimes you look at them and it's like a look of relief on their face, really, because they know, okay, I know mum, dad, you know, father-in-law, mother-in-law's looked after, but B, I can also provide for myself and provide for my family, you know, financially.
Yes, that's exactly right. And as you say, and I think that's after talking to Lorraine, it was just so interesting that she'd approached a couple of other people to look at starting up other day clubs.
That's
and
right.
they're just not interested because there's not the money necessarily there.
Unfortunately, once again, the dollar sign comes in.
Yeah. And, you know, there's these big organisations, you know, that they could easily be running these and amazing clubs. And as you say, what a great idea. So what about in these places like out in South Auckland? There's nowhere for people to go to because there's no such club. And so it's like, you know, if we can look at that and sort of say, well, that's making a big difference, then maybe something like the study might sort of push the government and the people in powers to be to say we actually need to concentrate on more places like this that people have access to.
That's right.
As opposed to other things, because it does have a big benefit on them being able to live with their family or live at home.
Absolutely.
So if you have even a husband and wife and one is unwell, or they can't get out and go to bowls or go to their shopping because they can't leave them at home, they've got that ability to for their loved one to go somewhere safe for the day, but it also gives them, you know, that time out, because carer fatigue is a massive problem.
Absolutely.
You know, particularly in the older generation as well, if one of them's looking after each other or things like that. Because I think somebody branched into the fact that, I think, was it you, Brian, or someone was saying that there's not it's very hard to get the resources and the support in the home these days, which is
it's really quite sad, Angela, because I live in South Auckland, and you know, I follow quite a couple of these you know, grapevine groups that they're available on Facebook, and it's so sad because there are many times where you find posts from loved ones to say, hey, you know, have you seen my granddad, or have you seen my grandma? And you know, they've wandered off while we were at work, and you know, it takes a good solid few hours until that person is identified. But I mean, I look at this post, and it's the love of a community that really gets together and keeps an eye out for this person who eventually is returned to their loved one. But I mean, if there were services like the day club that's available here in Howick, available somewhere out in South, you know, if we had a couple of them there, it really just would make things so much more better. I mean, I just find that unbelievably sad.
Yeah.
You know, to live in such a beautiful country like New Zealand, but not have this kind of service available for our most vulnerable.
Yeah.
It really just, yeah.
And I
It's,
think what was really interesting, we had a focus group in South Auckland and Manurewa, and a lot of what came out of it was that the crime is so bad out in South Auckland. I mean, the crime's bad everywhere, but that, you know, for them, they don't feel safe just to go to the supermarket or just to go for a walk down the road of the fear of being knocked over or their handbag taken or things happening. And I think there is a similar type of fear in Howick, not quite the same, but definitely out in South Auckland, each one of them sort of mentioned the fact that, you know, it wasn't the same community as it used to, and that, you know, that's a great fear of people as well. It's not that they don't want to go out, but without going with somebody else, they don't feel confident enough to actually go to the supermarket in Manurewa and actually carry a handbag and go in and feel that they'll be safe, that something doesn't happen to them. So yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of senior members from my own Assyrian community or my own church community. They've unfortunately been hit by cars, or
Yes.
they've been just pushed against the road, and it's very sad. But these things are happening, and these people that I speak of, they do suffer from dementia and things like that, but because their family members are working, although they're at home, sometimes they kind of go out and they go for a little bit of a walk, and then they end up getting unfortunately lost or hurt quite badly.
Yes, and it puts them off. Whereas if you're having these facilities like Howick Baptist, they're in a safe place, they're picked up and going somewhere where they've got the social side and they're getting a meal and they know that it's a safe place, but they're getting that ability to get out. And I know that Lorraine said they do exercise and art and craft and just a whole variety of things, which is excellent. Yeah.
Another place I thought that you might like to explore. I've got a friend who runs a stroke club.
Oh, of course. Yes, I thought about that actually. Yeah.
So that's another place.
Yeah, the only tricky part to that I think we found is that to be able to complete the survey, there's a little bit of a physical component to it. So we do height and weight and arm strength and things like that. And it's a little bit like the dementia side. So we have to be a little bit careful. We want to get a wide variety, but we also want to make it sort of accessible, that we don't it's tricky because some of it's involving standing and walking and sitting down and sit to stand, and so it's a little bit physical as well, and a little bit the same with there's a cognitive test as well. So because it can be quite, it's sort of a good sort of 3 hours, although we're going to sort of try to modify it and maybe get people to come and do the physical side separately and then just do the questions. But it is people have got to be sort of, I guess, strong enough to be able to complete those sides of things as well. So we're often a little bit careful. We don't want to set people up to feel like they're going to fail because they can't complete part of the survey. So, but no, that's a great idea. We did think about that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
I love the cognitive tests. The cognitive test. I had to do 2 in hospital because they thought I was losing my marbles or whatever, and I did the test, both of them, and later on the health nurse came back to me and she said, "You did well in those tests." I said, "Why?" Well, she says, "A normal, good, educated person will get 75%. She says, "You got 87%. You were well above the average. So you're definitely not going nutty." I had a good laugh with her.
No, they're really interesting. We've changed different ones as we've done them. We always involve them in all our studies because we have to get a baseline as to where the person sits when it comes to answering the questions. And as I say, in the super study, we had about 5 or 6 visits over the time of 3 years. And each time we would change it just slightly. So the cognitive test. So it's quite funny because some people would remember, we'd give them 5 words to remember, and we'd go back and they said, "I've remembered those 5 words." It's like, "Oh, that's good, but we'd change them." But yeah, I think it's one of those things. I think they give you a baseline of, I think it's a bit like your height and weight, isn't it? When they talk about BMI, they're a great tool, but you only take it as a tool. So for some people, just because you don't remember, certain part of it doesn't mean that you're also, as I think Brian's term was, losing your marbles. But yes, it's always interesting to see. It's just sometimes hard to get people to engage in those ones. I know the GP likes to do them, but yes, they're very individual to everybody. But an interesting tool to use in research, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you wanted to say something.
One thing I was going to talk about, but we changed the subject, so harking back to it, is about looking after folk like at Ninwa's place. What do they call it?
HPH.
No, the day.
The day program. Yes.
The day program. Years ago, it's not new. Years and years ago, when I was a kid in Wellington, my aunt started a group very similar. She hired a church hall, wasn't her church, but she hired a hall one day a week, and she organised the women at home to go around and pick up the elderly. It was only one day a week, but it gave the caregivers a respite, and they called it Care and Craft. And my aunt got my mother involved with it, and for years and years Mum was doing this sort of thing. They'd go and collect people, and they would give them morning tea, lunch and afternoon tea, and then take them home so that their caregivers could have a bit of respite. That was years ago, but then it stopped because of, guess what? Health and safety in the workplace.
That's the one. Yes. There's so many hoops and things you have to jump through. And I mean, even in our research, I think I branched on it in the beginning before you were there, but we have all sorts of health and safety, and we also have to submit all our stuff to the ethics committee. And before, we used to sort of go along to people and say, here's a 2-page form, this is your consent to do the study. And you used to sort of go through a couple of basics, sign the form, and away we went. Now it's like, do you consent to using the NHI? Do you consent to your GP? Do you consent to this? Do you consent to that? And it's like 10 different pages. It's huge. And it's like, all because the ethics committee. And same with health and safety. We, I mean, touch wood, I've never had an issue or a problem in any of my time when I've been going to people's houses and doing the physical and the assessments. But now they're like, oh, you must do this because of health and safety, or what happens if this happens, or this, that. So yeah, sometimes it does get a little bit crazy, the old ethics and I mean, it's there to keep everybody safe, which is important, but yeah, sometimes we do get a bit too heavy on it.
Yes, because I did it for years and years, even when my mother got early dementia herself. She turned from being a helper to one of these,
someone needing care.
Yes, and that gave my sister at least one day a week that she could do her own things.
Which is lovely, isn't it? Yeah. I wish we had more of it in Auckland. I think that we very much lack, particularly in particular the dementia care side of things, that there's not the facilities, appropriate ones out there for people. And it is difficult for people caring for them in their own home. And I think that I see in my other job a lot of carer fatigue and people that have to look after their loved ones, and as you say, it's difficult to even get out to the supermarket or just go out and do something, or if they want to go and have a game of golf or bowls, that's really difficult because they don't feel like they can leave the house, which is quite sad.
My sister, I got a phone call from my mother, and she said, I haven't seen your sister for a week now, and she wouldn't leave my mother for a week. And it turned out I rang up my sister straight away, and she was up the shops getting the food.
Oh, right. And so she just thought she'd abandoned her.
Yes, and it was for a week. I haven't seen your sister for a week.
Yeah, what plays in your mind, isn't it?
That was when we put Mum into care.
Yeah.
I was really cross about that to start with, because Mum had always looked after the old folk in the family.
That's right, yes.
And she used to write a letter to her sister and call it Karori Old Folks Home. because we had 3, and I thought Mum did that, and now she's being sent so that they wouldn't have to go, and now my mother's being sent. But after, it was very tricky because I'd go to visit Mum, and she was fine, and I thought, but you're able to pull yourself together, I think, when you're having visitors, and that's what was happening. But my mother really did have it, so
yeah, it's so individual for everybody, though, isn't it? I mean, I think it's very hard to even make that decision, I think, for people to have to go into care and things like that, and it's getting the right place and the right facility with the right staff. And that's another thing I'm sure that is another big topic, is that they don't particularly pay the staff at these places very well either, so they're very hard to, we've got a huge lack of nursing in New Zealand, of nurses, but that falls back onto actually, there's been some rest homes that have had to close down, which is very sad because they can't get the staff. So it's a big area of things.
We were lucky with my mother because their staff was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, that's great.
And Mum perked up an awful lot because all her friends were dying off.
Oh.
Now I'm that age myself, and that's really happening to me too. All her friends are dying off.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it?
Hmm.
Now, I don't know how we, whether I've got all the information here for the study. So if any of you would like to join or pass on the information, I think, do you get a newsletter or something? Did anyone put it in the newsletter? Or you did? Oh, fantastic.
That's right. So they do get a weekly e-newsletter, Angela. So what I could do for you, if you'd like, is I could just have a little bit of a reminder in there maybe for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
And if anybody is interested, do you have a link for them to sign up on, or
So
should they just email me and then I can email you their details and get in touch with them?
Yes, I mean, basically on this little form we've got here, that's got the details on. So there's 3 ways of doing it. There's one that's just a free phone number, so it's an 0800 number that you can call. You just basically leave a simple voicemail of your details and that you'd like somebody to contact you about the study, and just say where you live is always handy. And then depending on where you are, if it's in Howick, obviously I'll give you a call and arrange a time to drop off some consent forms and talk about the study a bit more.
While I have you guys on here, what do you guys think is best? Barbara, Lynn, Brian, Jenny, Chris, Claire. What do you guys think it's okay if I just leave it in the newsletter?
Yeah.
And then you guys can decide?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you haven't been here, well, you won't know what it's about.
Yeah.
That's
Yes, we need a little blurb about what it's all about and why.
Yeah, maybe if you could send me a little bit of a blurb, Angela, or a little bit of a snippet of your research, and then I can include that in the e-newsletter, as Barbara was saying, because a few haven't joined, so they can maybe read that blurb and or that snippet of your research, and then if they feel that they'd like to join, then they can either email me directly and I'll pass the information on to you, or they could call the 0800 number for you. So if you send me that information, I'll definitely have it out for the next at least 2 to 3 weeks. I'll leave it in the e-newsletter and it can come out this week.
Lovely. No, we've got some information that was sort of set up to put in a newsletter, so that would be great. And then let me know about your morning teas or anything coming up, and it'd be great to come along. And as I say, I'm going to try and pop up there in the next couple of weeks, but if you're having a morning tea at Te Tui, I'd love to come along, and depending on working in time.
Well, that's next Tuesday, isn't it?
Yes. So it is. It's next Tuesday. So we have our catch-ups at Te Tui on the last Tuesday of each month.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. So if you'd like to attend that one, you're most welcome to do that. Or if you want the month after, whatever works for you.
What time do you meet?
So it's normally from 10:30 to 12:30.
Okay, lovely. That sounds great. And that's Te Tui, the Pakuranga, with the cafe and that is, isn't it?
Yes, yes. I will send you the reminder on to your email if you'd like, Angela, and then that way you can have it. That way you can have it onto your calendar. And if you can't make next week's one, that's okay. I know it's a little bit of a short notice, but if you'd like the month after as well, you're most welcome to come along.
Yeah, no, this Tuesday probably suits quite well actually. It's
awesome.
That's actually not too bad fitting in schedule wise. And how many people do you normally get attending the morning teas?
I mean, sometimes it's about 10 people, sometimes 11, sometimes less. It all depends really on who can make it.
Yeah. sometimes it depends on the weather, I'm sure, as well, because I know
Yeah.
there's days that it's pouring down with rain.
Yeah.
You sort of think, oh, do I want to go out today when it's so miserable?
Yeah. But I
Just look
just
for
think maybe it'll
look
be
for
a
the
good,
noisy group.
yeah.
Hey, it's a noisy group, is it?
Yep.
But I'm just thinking maybe it'll be a good opportunity for you as well, Angela, just to have a little bit of a briefing there at the catch up. And there'll probably be people there as well that weren't able to join the Zoom session
Oh,
this
yeah.
morning. And if you can maybe just bring some resources to pass over
Yeah,
on to them.
absolutely. And if anyone wants to pass them on from there, that
Yeah,
would be great.
they can have a hard copy, and at the same time, they'll have it on the e-newsletter as well.
Yeah, no, that sounds fantastic. Great. Excellent. Yeah.
Any other questions for Angela, you guys?
No.
No?
No.
Awesome. Was there anything else that you wanted to add on to your talk, Angela, before we let
No,
you
I
go?
think I think I pretty much covered most of it. It was lovely to meet you all today, and hopefully we might see some of you next Tuesday as well. And yeah, I
Awesome.
will send that through to you, Nanua, and then pop it on the newsletter, and then we'll sort of go from there. But it's all very exciting. So yeah.
Fantastic. No, we'll definitely keep that in there. And thank you very much for your time this morning. And thank you
That's all right.
everybody for joining and for all of your input. Highly, highly grateful for your talk today, Angela. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to meet you all, and hopefully we might see some of you next week, or hopefully some of you will join up to the study. Husbands and wives, both of you can be involved, not just one.
We both have a different view on life.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much.
No worries.
Yeah.
See you later, everybody. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Chris,
Bye-bye,
Chris,
Barbara.
Chris,
Bye.
can you stay online?
Can you-
Can I have a little
yeah.
chat before you run off?
Uh-huh.
What?
Chris,
So who was that addressed to, Brian?
to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because Ninwa, I wanted
How